Once upon a time, in a world that was drowning in sin, there were people who felt lost and alone. They looked around at the world they lived in, and they felt overwhelmed by the weight of their sins. Everywhere they looked, there was greed, hatred, and violence. The air was thick with the stench of corruption, and the ground was stained with the blood of innocent victims. They saw people lying, cheating, and stealing from one another without a second thought. They saw people using their power to oppress those who were weaker than them. They saw people hurting each other, both physically and emotionally, without any regard for the consequences. As they watched all of this happening, they couldn't help but feel guilty. They knew that they, too, had contributed to the sinful nature of the world they lived in. They had lied to their loved ones, cheated on their taxes, and turned a blind eye to the suffering of others. But then, things started to get worse. The sky turned dark, and the air became thick with a noxious fog that burned their lungs. The ground shook and cracked beneath their feet, and buildings crumbled to the ground. Fires raged out of control, and the seas rose higher and higher until they swallowed entire countries. As they watched the destruction around them, they knew that this was the result of the world's sins. They realized that the world was on the brink of destruction and that there was no way to turn back the clock. In their panic, they fell to their knees and cried out to God, begging for forgiveness for their sins and the sins of the world. But as they prayed, they heard a voice calling out to them. It was a voice filled with anger and condemnation, and it spoke to them directly in their heart. The voice told them that they, too, were to blame for the sinful state of the world. They had failed to act when they saw injustice, they had turned a blind eye to the suffering of others, and they had sinned in ways too numerous to count. As the voice continued to speak, the person felt a terror unlike any they had ever experienced. They realized that they were facing the wrath of God and that there was no escape. They knew that they had to atone for their sins and that they had to do it quickly before it was too late. The message was clear: the world is a terrifying place, and sin has consequences. We must take responsibility for our actions and strive to live a life of righteousness and love. We must never turn a blind eye to injustice or suffering, and we must always strive to make the world a better place. So let us all choose to live a life of compassion and forgiveness, and let us all strive to be a light in the darkness, for the consequences of our sins can be terrifying beyond imagination.